Right, we are recording going in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Online Darts, everyone. Been doing the rounds the last few days, and we're 24 hours later than we were hopeful to, but we finally got Dev in. Dev, first of all, how are you?
Really good, Phil. It's great to see you. I know that you've made the trip over and we were supposed to meet each other last night, but I mean, diaries are crazy. Me playing in the Legends with Modus, I mean, now I'm classed as a legend. I still feel as a young man, but yeah, you're sitting in that room and you realize that people are 57, 59 and 60. So yeah, I'll take that title right now, and yeah, I think tonight's going to be a great day.
It's been a mixed month since 6 weeks since the last time we spoke. You were prepping to obviously for the ADC Global, which was incredible. You went and won that. Q School didn't go as you wanted. We saw flashes from you, even in the Super Series this week. We've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. All.
I got it.
Where is the Dev game right now?
I think with the ADC Global Championships, I went in there hoping that I would use that as a yardstick for the Q School and just check. I know that my year hasn't been great. Obviously last season with the injury and all of those things, not having a lot of time to prepare. And I think the Global Championship was a great measurement of what I'm capable of. I think that the PDC requires a different mindset. And I know that as well because I've been to the Q School a few times, and you know that you have to have, there's a level of bounce back, there's a level of kind of grit, and there's a level of understanding what you're capable of, and you have to kind of repeat that for performances on over and over so that you can have that confidence to know it is in the tank, you know what I mean? And then, I mean, this week in the Legends, is up and down, needed to play when I needed to play, and just took my time when I needed to as well. So I think that there's a lot to show that I'm making slow progress, but the big thing is the progress is there. So I feel as though this year I'm going to take 12 months to rebuild my career and just make sure that by the end of this year, 2026 is going to be a new kind of opportunity for me for the Q School, and then we'll take it from there. But I think that I'm looking forward to this year, literally being able to play with no pain and stuff like that. But I also look at the opportunities that we afforded. I mean, we've got still a World Championship spot, whether you play Challenge Tour or I go to the African qualifier, still have the World Cup spot. So there's elements to the game that I know that if you're not ready, you'll be left out to dry in the PDC on the tour itself, and you don't want to just go to the tour as a novelty player. You want to be there and not be the easy game. You want to be the one that's competing for position, place, and everything else. So, yeah, I think it's probably the best thing that I didn't get my tour card, but there's loads of things on the back burner, anyways.
Look, on the South African qualifier for the World Championship, the way Cameron Corralison played was incredible because, look, let's be brutally honest, when the draw was done, everyone put him the lamb to the slaughter in that game against Western Island, and what he produced was just incredible, and you must be proud as a fellow South African what you saw from him that day.
It's the warrior spirit. I mean, in most Africa, we always behind the 8 ball, if you call it that. I mean, when you play the World Cup, it's always a professional with an amateur that's not played on the stage before, and we generally get through kind of by experience when I'm part of the team, and just the pure grit and self-belief that you kind of instill in players that are coming over. But Cameron has really showed amazing progress in his career, in his mindset, maturity in the game, just understanding. It's also based on the platform that the African Darts Group gives. Is a lot of the games are stage final levels with cameras and streaming and all of that. So you kind of give them a glimpse of what they're coming to. So they're not like a deer in the headlights like before. But like you said, I mean, Cameron messaged me about it as well. And when the draw came out, he's like, I'm going to need to play my best game just to kind of compete, you know. And I'm like, all you have to do is just be the best you can be on the day. And our conversations were limited, but I knew that I needed to leave him alone to just kind of unpack what he's going to feel like when he comes in, how ready he's going to be. And I think that was an important thing, and people don't understand how ready you need to be to play one of the very best on stage. And I knew that there was levels to his game, but when I saw what he achieved on the world stage, I mean, it ticked the box in his head to know that he's capable of competing at that high level. It's kind of opened up some eyes of some management, some sponsors as well. So there's been a lot of talks to and fro with he's going to take 12 months out to kind of reconstruct and just structure his life correctly. and then be ready for 2026. So you could see Cameron Carolison still this year. I mean, you're going to see him at the World Cup, regardless of who the partner is. But I know that he's looking at 2026 to potentially give it a go at the Q School. So, yeah, I think it's fantastic. But the showing itself, it gave everybody an understanding, not just globally, but in Africa as well, to say that if Cameron can do it, if Devon can do it, if all of these Simon Adams can do it, if these players can do it on the stage, why can't I? And I think that that's starting to hit home more than anything else.
On the actual World Championships itself, we know that you're a bit of a geek and you watch it all. What was your take on the World Championship, first of all, as a whole?
I think I have a theory regarding the Luke Littler effect, right? And I think that with all the attention placed on Luke, players went in there with lower confidence because they knew that it was the Luke show. And players weren't gassed up, if you must call it that. They didn't come into it with the confidence that, like Michael Van Cohen normally comes into, like, I'm the man to beat, or Luke Humphries being one of the most successful players over the last 24, 36 months. Nobody they give you an opportunity, but not the respect you deserve. And I think that a lot of, if you look at the interviews, a lot of aggressive interviews, a lot of players playing out the dummies and just reacting in a certain way. And I think that's kind of boiled down to what was happening with the Luke Littler effect, which is not a negative thing. I think that players were just never put in this position where somebody's young, really great, and all the attention's on them. Normally the attention is sprayed, and I think this time around everybody wanted the Luke Littler click. I think it's opened up a lot of people's eyes and just understand, like, you got to be great again. You got to put in the time. You're not just going to turn up. And there were some shocks in there as well, like results, and you see like the likes of Gowan Price kind of coming back. Joe Cullen played really well after the Vessel Nyman kind of incident where he created a storm out, which I think he done respectfully, but still I think there was ways and means that he potentially wanted to do it differently, but there was just so much energy in him and him playing that well, and a first time for a long time that he's played so well. So I think that, I mean, it carried on into the Gowan Price game, played phenomenally there. Gowan Price also getting to the back end, getting the nod on the Premier League. Nathan Aspinall saying a few things, putting the PDC in a position to get the Premier League spot. Not saying that he doesn't deserve it, but I think that, like you see Mike Dedeker saying, these two players just a walk-on and a dance, but I think that that's just a bit more tongue-in-cheek than really meaning it, because, I mean, the likes of Dedeker winning a tournament, that's great, but that doesn't always get you into the Premier League. We've seen it. Andrew Gilding, Danny Noppert, same things. Whether it's a Sky tournament or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It's just based on performance. But we know it's a roadshow. It's an entertaining, darting roadshow. And if you're one of those players, you're always going to get the nod. And players now really need to look at profile, investing in marketing and all of those things to make them ready for the Premier League. Not performance-wise, but I think that as a profile in the whole. But I feel as though the World Championship, I mean, Luke Littler, everybody expected him to get it. He did get it, and I think that is the big thing. It's the shoulders on and the head on this young boy now is it's crazy. Like you see how he performed in that final, and Michael was merely a by-part player in that final, which was unlike him. But in the first opening elements, he had to find his feet, and you saw as the game went on and progressed, he found his feet. But I feel as though Luke, he might find it slightly difficult now that he's the world champ. He's got, what's the motivation now? What's the next move? And you hear a lot of champions go from, once you win the first one, it's great. It's the second one is probably the harder one. I'm a global champion, not a world champion yet. But I think that it's not even in the same talking, because you realize, like Phil Taylor obviously winning 16 times. I mean, there's some real nuggets and mentality that you can actually grab from him, just basing on how do you kind of remotivate yourself. But it's gonna be challenging. It's gonna be great. I think that a lot of players are now fighting for their time in the limelight and time under the sun.
A couple of points off of what you said there. One, the media profile with the Luke Littler effect. Obviously that you work in media as well. You know how it works. One, are you surprised the way certain players have reacted? And two, the way the media have latched onto Luke and everything is about him. Are they almost doing the sport a bit of disrespect, concentrating on one person when the pool is so deep?
I think it's because the story and the narratives has always been the same with the Premier League and the top players still being somewhat like you got the likes of Michael van Gerwen, you had the Gary Andersons, you had the Peter Wrights, and those stories are now have been told numerous times. And I think that because Luke Littler came in at such a young age, such a booming firecracker kind of player, it then put everybody kind of in a position where they were not getting the attention, they were not getting the phone calls. Players, as much as they say, just play the sport, and they like the ego to be stroked, because ultimately it's almost a validation that I am one of the best players in the world. Once they don't get the interviews, the write-ups, they don't get the praise that they do, the ego doesn't get stroked. So now where do you get that? If you look for external validation and it doesn't come externally, then what are you without that applause? Are you still the same person? And I think that it's not done a disservice. It's kind of opened up a chapter within the sport. Now you have to kind of profile build like a lot of top players do anyways, but they do it through agencies. So the sport of darts is now moving and I mean with the contracts and agreements that's in place now with the PDC and Sky and everything like this, it's going to force management companies to invest in agencies to actually build the profile of the player externally away from the hockey, and that will give you the nod for the World Series. That will give you the nod for better deals, because everybody's looking at Luke Littler's deal and him being a multimillionaire by the time he's 18, not just prize money but endorsements and things like that.
Of course, yeah.
There's a lot to be said about that, because before the sport never got that professional endorsement or reputable companies coming on board. Now they have, so there's a gateway. But now how marketable is your brand off away from the hockey? If there's numerous amounts, let's say there's 32 great players, what makes you different? And that's the difference.
Like that. Premier League, you touched on it there. First of all, what's your take as a fan and as someone that works in the media of the 8 selected? I'm guessing they'll be slightly different.
I think that it's probably one of the most unpredictable but yet extremely entertaining lineups we've had in a long time. You've got fiery players like you've got Nathan Aspinall, Gerwyn Price, fiery, right? Luke Humphries slightly showing that side of himself as well. You got Luke Littler, obviously top class, and then Stephen Bunting coming in as well, and Chris Dobie. You look at those kind of players and you realize that, I mean, they are more on the quiet side, but they performed well. So when you look at a holistic Premier League, you can literally see the tick boxes that are being ticked why these players are there. I think that, I mean, and I've not left Michael van Gerwen out of it, but I'm saying that he being probably one of the young ones still in that group, but been a vintage or veteran within the Premier League. You realize now you can't pick a winner before the event is gone, but you know who's going to kind of ruffle feathers and all of those things. Gerwyn Price's performance in the Bahrain Super Series, you see the likes of Stephen Bunting winning it after a long time. There's a lot of notions and telling that there's going to be levels of the game. Same when we saw Phil Taylor obviously break through that 100 average barrier. Then 100 became a reality for most, yeah. So now you're seeing this 115, 112, and it's looking normal. Like 111 was set by, or Steve Bunting broke.
And then 23 minutes later,
100%. Before that, it wouldn't happen like that. You know what I mean? People would glamorize that. So I realize now, like, I mean, from a journalistic point of view, from a media point of view, there's going to be a lot of stories. There's a lot of backstories. There's a lot of re-energizing the sport itself, because everybody now wants their piece, so they're going to do stuff over and above. Players are going to look at it differently. And I think that the friendships that currently exist, it's not going to be as friendly as it was before, because there's so much money on the spell. And yeah, everybody wants Luke Littler not to win it, but he's basically going to show you why he's one of the best in the world. And I think that the fans are going to love it. I know that a lot of fans are complaining about the way that the format of the tournament is and all of those things, but I feel as though, I mean, it's literally a championship every single week, which for any normal dart player fan or purist, it's fun to see.
You give me stuff here. Again, a couple of points off of what I just picked up in there. One, friendships. Darts is a single sport. You've got to be in it for yourself. Over the last, I'm going to say 3 to 4 years, has it become too friendly? Because we go back when we had Adrian walking off against Peter, and there was genuine rivalries back then, and I feel we kind of lost that recently. But do you think that is now going to go?
I think the reason why we've lost it is because if you look at last 10 years, probably not so much 10, but let's call it 5 years. The exhibitions have now become so continuous and such a big market that's bringing the players to the audience away from the major events. These players travel with each other every single week. Now they're doing exhibitions where they have to be friendly, do meet and greets, share meals, travel with airports and all of those things. A lot of the times the reason why footballers can have, like Liverpool and Man United, have this rivalry is because you'd be in your camp, I'd be in my camp, and it's our tribe against your tribe. Now, as individuals, there's not a lot of that. You've seen a lot of fist pumping, shaking, loving again. Yeah, I think that we're in a position now where players will realize that that doesn't get me the advantage, and it reignites. It's basically reset the sport, but at a higher level. So now what I think is going to happen is Gowan Price is going to be the Gowan Price that we know. Michael Van Gogh is not going to be as friendly with everybody. I think the Nathan Aspinall, Luke Littler kind of hugging and fist pumping, that's going to end. Stephen Bunting will go about his business under the radar, but beat and knock down a lot of people without them expecting it, because he's a player that you can't really get G'd up for, because he's not going to reciprocate it. But you know that he's going to be like a ninja in the night, really, and just kind of knock you out without you even knowing. So I think that the friendships will remain, but I think that it's going to tone down a lot, and there's going to be a lot of fire, and I think I'm excited for that, because then the rivalries start, and then things don't become, then everybody that were friends before that sat on the same table don't sit on the same table anymore.
Also, going into what you said there about like Mike De Decker speaking out, we've heard Chizzy speak out. The first time in a long time we've had players openly speaking out, and I'm going to say it, they've been criticising decisions. We haven't had this in the sport for a long time, where players have openly criticised the PDC's decisions. One, is it a good thing? Should they be held accountable by players? Two, will it cost them in the long run? Because when they're up for discussion, hang on a minute, he said this. And three, is it a good thing overall?
I think number one is if you look at it, players is always going to have an opinion like the PDC, but the PDC is based on a business model. So they know what's best for their business, because it's their business. They've grown it to where it's at now and looking at the future. So I think that a lot of the times you can't get all 8 picks wrong. You might have 1 or 2, but not all 8 picks. So I think that if you give them, if there's a play in the balance, and this is what I'll come back to, it's that play in the balance, like how big is his profile, what's his walk-on song, like what kind of entertainment value does he bring. If you don't tick any of those boxes, that's on you, not on the PDC. You can't hate the player for being, having a great walk-on, being charismatic on the stage, and then getting the nod, because he's put that takes effort. That's completely out of, so you can't just be picked on good looks. Otherwise, I'd be in the Premier League. But if you look, exactly, you know what I mean. But you realize this very quickly, and I think that when players are making these statements, I think how they word it is the most important thing, because you can have an opinion and it could be something constructive, but when you negatively kind of biting the hand that feeds you, it's always going to result in you being thrown out and not taken care of in the future. And I think that the PDC won't do that deliberately, but they do know. I mean, there's been in the past where Gowan Price has said stuff, but he's still in the Premier League because his profile, what he's done, what he's achieved, all of these things ticks the boxes. So you do understand that the PDC is not going to cut their nose to spite their face, but what they are going to look at is, if you're not that player and you don't tick the box fully with an ink pen, you're not going to get the nod. So I feel as though there's big kind of almost management decisions to be made behind the scenes. And on your last point, I think that it doesn't affect how the decisions are made, because when it comes to pounds and pennies, the PDCs are always going to lead towards that, and what that leads to. It's not going to be, oh, he said this and he said that. It's just how big of a player are you, and I think that that's the most important thing. And the PDC, I mean, if you look at the PDC, they've not got it wrong yet. So, I mean, they know what they're doing. Players only know about the sport that they play on and off the hockey. That's why I mentioned earlier, you have to know a bit more about the sport, come into the area. We're literally in the internet bubble right now, and it's starting. Players now realize there's there's a massive real estate with regards to their profile, the sport itself, what they can do, the add-ons, and not just see it as I go to the hockey or I play in these events and I leave and I get an exhibition. So now you become not a one-trick pony. You have to look at it as an opportunity to kind of potentially enhance your profile to a level that you've never seen it before.
You say they don't get it wrong. Now, there's been some rule changes that normally when we see stuff come out, the PDC industry stuff, we see, oh, I don't mind it, I hate it. They changed the European tour. You read social media the same as I do. I haven't seen one positive comment about this. Now, again, I'm talking to Dev here as one, the darts fan, and two, the player here. So, does this make the top 16 elitist? Because now it is so hard to break that top 16. And your take on it, one as the fan and two as the player.
I think I'm glad that you broke it down like that, because as the fan, you're always going to be, the top 16 is the Premier League anyways. Potentially, like the top 8 in the Premier League that's playing in the Premier League is in the top 16. So they are getting a bit of a softer ride into the sport itself. And I think that this is probably the new chapter that the PDC is going to go into, where the major events, or the Europeans, which is the Touring Europe show, is now going to be seen as you'll always be guaranteed the top 16 in the world, which will mean that sold out venues from a business perspective, and also means that there's a popular from the merchandising, how everything is obviously catered for. So now these players, like for example, Nathan Aspinall had to go to qualifiers last year because he wasn't in the top 16 in the Players' Championship order of merit. But because of all the responsibilities that the PDC puts on the players itself, they can't adhere to the Players' Championship rules and all of these things. So previous years, if you were a top player, you were punished for being a top player, because it means that you can't play in the qualifiers, you can't do this, so you have to choose, and the PDC always says, choose your games that you want to play, choose your events, because you don't have to do all of them. So as a fan, I'm saying, if I'm going to see the very best at all of the events that I want to go to, then I'm going to spend my money. If I don't have the Luke Humphreys, Gowan Price, Michael Van Gowan at these events, is it as great to see players that, if I'm not the dart purist? And the answer is no. I mean, it's now a commercial model that they're looking at, and I think that it's the right thing to do for the fan, for the player, or the players that are top 16 that can't make the qualifiers if you're not in the top Pro Tour order of merit. Because if you look at it, the Pro Tour order of merit is slightly losing its importance on the PDC circuit. Simply because if you're a top player and you're traveling to the World Series, or you're traveling to a European, you're going to go to the Premier League, then you have to play in a qualifier, you're literally never going to be at home. And that's a big thing. You need mental health is a big part of it as well. So there's a lot from a fan and a PDC perspective. If you are a player within the venue, it's the worst decision they could have ever made for the feeling of a player. If you're outside of the top 16, you know that it's virtually impossible for you to catch them now with the rule change. And I think that I feel as though this is more of a pilot decision than it is going to be a decision for the years to come, because they have to see what the reaction is, what and not the player reaction, but the reaction to the order of merit, how that impacts the players playing in the Players' Championships. Do they increase that prize money? Do they change some things to benefit? I think that there's a lot of the PDC you won't always get it right, because you have to see the entire roadmap kind of play out before you go, oh, that was a great decision. Most of the time they get it right. I think with this decision now, we're in a place where it's new territory. I mean, they're probably looking at getting a European broadcast on board that's going to broadcast this at a high level. So how do you do that? You promote that we're going to have the 16 players there. You're going to have, it's the same when Phil Taylor was obviously at his pomp. It was all about Phil Taylor, and everybody else around him was a part player, but it was always Phil Taylor. Now you have so many players involved. I think that it hurts a lot of the players in the venue that come to the Players' Championships, but then again, it just goes to show, like, the PDC is a commercial model, and they're a business itself, and they look after the pounds and pennies, just to make sure that it's going to get to the £1 million mark for the winner. When it gets there, you'll understand that everybody's going to be happy because the opportunity is there. And then all of that money filters down, but it's because of the decisions they're making early on. So I think that it's a bit of, it's bittersweet, but depending on which side you are. If you're top 16, you're smiling. If you're not top 16, you're thinking, I've got this massive mountain to climb, and you're not going to throw off those players unless you are exceptional. But in the sport itself, I mean, there's opportunity. So you're just going to have to continue to kind of work hard and build that profile and become that part player.
Again, something that you said there, the Pro Tour used to be the bread and butter, it used to be the staple that held the tour together. Your words, the Pro Tour Order of Merit is becoming irrelevant. Now, how does that work? Because it's always been the Pro Tour Order of Merit has been the one that's kept the tour going. If that becomes irrelevant, what now takes over, and how do you fix that? If the tour's not important enough to be that ranking that everyone looks at, how do you then fix that, and how does the tour then work?
I think not saying that it's not irrelevant. I think the matter of importance of playing on the tour now, because previously the tour had the connection to the European Championship. It had the connection to all of the majors, which is still the qualifier. But if you're in the top 16, you kind of almost guarantee that. So you're playing for another 16 spots. So you're looking at, 112 players are playing for 16 spots on the tour. So now it puts it in a position. When you look at that, there has to be a model that's in place that they've looked at completely down the line. I'm not obviously privy to that information, but what I'm saying is it now seems as though if you're not playing, the reason why you had all of these top players coming to the Players' Championship, because they knew that I need to be in the European Tour, because if I'm not in the European Tour, I'm going to lose potentially 30,000 plus the 10, so you're looking at £40,000. If I'm not in the top 16, I'm not going to be in this major, I'm not going to do this. A lot of the times players, you'll see that players that don't make the Players' Championship or end at the bottom tier of the Players' Championships, those are the ones that don't go to many Players' Championships. So they pick and choose, like Phil Taylor at his prime, where he used to go to the majors and some of the events. So now it's going to become back to that, and I think that it's probably going to take the PDC 2 to 3 years to figure out where the Players' Championship fits in, because the Players' Championship is kind of where you do your work, where you it's like going to work basically, and then the celebration is the majors and everything else. But I think that there has to be a level of importance on that, number one, and number two is how important is it, or how will it impact the players coming through, and how important is the tour card then going to be? Because you still obviously can't get the tour events if you don't have a tour card. But if you get a tour card, it's going to mean that you stay in the cycle continuously, because you're not getting to that very top level. You're not getting to, after the 2 years, you have to be exceptional to stay in the tour, number one. Number two is the top 16, you're never going to break into that, and you know that's where the bread and butter is. So it's a lot to kind of, there's been a lot of change, let me put it that way. And like any chapter, the PDC has now closed the PDC of old chapter, where everything was done in a certain way. They're reinventing themselves. And I think that it's a futuristic look on the sport, and it's probably there's going to be some more changes. And we know that nobody really likes change unless you have an open mind and adapt.
Yeah.
And everybody looks at it individually. Like, how does it affect me? Not how does it affect the entire model? How does it look for the entire sport? What does it mean to open up the sport like this? I mean, you got more World Championship spots. You're going to have potentially more World Cup spots. There's going to be more TV events. You're going to have all of these added on stuff. Now it looks as if PDC is getting ready for that. And what does the tour player do? You then have to decide. And I think that the PDC is putting it in the players' court now.
Can we catch up on some stuff with you now? That then last time we spoke on certain aspects. First one, this hallowed World Series event in South Africa. Last time we spoke, you were going back to speak to the sports minister of South Africa. Where are we in terms of planning, and how close are we to getting a World Series event in South Africa?
I think a lot of the conversation that was had in South Africa was great. There's points of it now that we're looking at. There might be another African country that looking at it as well, which is great, because now you have two options, different ministries, different importances in the sporting world itself. So yeah, I think for me on my radar is 2026, 2027. I go back to South Africa to have another conversation, just to kind of put things in place. And then there's there's potential investors as well that we're talking to now that put things in place so that we can host it. I feel as though the timing now with the PDC having all of this commercial kind of expansion and everything else, it gives room for conversations that couldn't be happening before this. I think that we do know exactly from an expense perspective how that roadshow looks, what it takes, and all of those things. So I think that with all of that, it puts us in a better position now than it did 12 months ago. And I'm hoping for my meeting with the PDC and the report from the board itself after the request that I have put in. These are going to be great things, but the PDC knows exactly what needs to happen when it needs to happen. So I trust them impeccably with the decisions that they make, and I feel as though once we get the nod with the World Series, we've seen what the World Series can do in different countries. We've seen the likes of top players coming through and experiencing this, but also just the legacy program that happens. So you'll get younger players playing, attracted to the sport, all of these things. And then quickly and quite certainly that it now becomes an expanded version. So 2026, 2027 is my fingers crossed, my toes are crossed even, everything else as well. And I think that it's, once we're about to make the announcement, you'll be the first to know.
On darts in South Africa, like you just said there, has the Luke Littler effect hit South African darts yet, or are you still waiting for that to translate over with the youngsters in particular that are picking them up? Like we see here in the UK, academies are now booming. They're putting on extra nights because of this Luke Littler effect. Has that transcended yet, or is it still waiting?
I think especially in South Africa, I mean the big thing with the culture of the sport, the World Championships is hosted over a winter period in the UK and Europe. So everybody's indoors, everybody's glued to the screens. The Southern Hemisphere, that is our hottest period, so everybody's at the beaches. So there is a difference in it, but I can say that there is a massive uptake of the sport now in South Africa and Africa. More people are watching it, more people are interested, and I think that it's the connotation of the new. It's Luke Littler changing everything in that aspect. So I feel as though we'll probably see it in the next probably 12 to 24 months. It's now brought on aboard the International Darts School League that we'll be launching as well, which is going to change the way in which the platform is introduced in schools. The JDC is doing a great job. We know that the World Dart Federation is doing a great job. I mean, with the development tour, the PDC and the PDPA is doing a great job. So there's a lot of different elements and channels and lanes that players can play in, but we need to create a standardized opportunity for kids in schools, because a lot of the times these are these little small kind of matters of individual brilliance that you see, but not from school level. So there's no school system, no school curriculum that attaches, and that's where dartboard maths comes in. But the International Darts School League now is high priority for me. This year we have there's a major event also going to happen. We're just completing the dates, but we're going to have a mini version of the Ali Pali happen at the Modus Lounge as well, which we kind of making sure that it works correctly. With the World Dart Federation endorsing it as well, that's been a massive kind of boost for us, knowing that we can now go to, I think we've got 5 venues already confirmed for qualifiers for the mini Ali Pali event that we're going to have with the Modus. And I feel as though that would give kids a lot more of their own kind of real estate. Because now it means that I'm going to play in this event that is specific for me, and I'm not just a byproduct of an event. You know what I mean? So
of course.
I think the International Darts School League is there's a lot to come with it. So I've designed an autonomous coaching app as well, which will teach kids and teachers how to coach. And we know that there's going to be news coming out that the PDPA also going to bring out something with regards to a regulated coaching system. So I think that there's a lot in the sport itself right now. I think that everything is geared. If the structure, the model, or the business development that you have speaks to not only the darting community, but every single person that plays the sport from 4 years old up to 80 years old, if it works within their sector and in the industry, it'll make sense to obviously hop on and push for it.
A couple of bits again off what you said there with the Inter-Schools League and dartboard maths. We see it in the UK in terms of the PE curriculum. It's very standardised: football, rugby, tennis, cricket in the summer, hockey, Getting darts into schools, playing and the arithmetic side of it, this could be huge for global darts, not just like they said in Bahrain that every school in Bahrain is introducing dartboard and so on going forward for maths. But if we can get darts into curriculums worldwide, this puts the sport on another level.
100%. And I think that me having the foresight probably 2-3 years ago, it's never been a myth that darts, obviously, dartboard, the maths that we use within the sport of darts, has always existed. And you know that players that play darts have mental math skills that are university level, if I must call it that. So now creating this, I felt as though at the time that I was creating it, it was needed, but then the push with the Luke Littler effect now has kind of implemented it in a way that we have to do it now. And our product, the Dartboard Maths product, is perfectly poised for that. But I also feel as though the International Dart School League is now positioned correctly, because now we're not only teaching the kids how to play, because we know kids love a sport one day, play another sport the next, and they fall in and out of love. But the most important thing is the driver, which is the coach. So if you have a school where there's a coach that doesn't really know about the sport, but they like the sport. So now if there's a system in place for that, which we already have with the internet, with the autonomous app, it changes the dynamic completely. And I think that we probably 3 to 5 years ahead of the game right now, and feel like we're perfectly poised for global adoption. I think that where the sport is at right now, commercially, it's ready, and I'm really, really excited for it, because I think the methods that's implemented within our sport can certainly be beneficial within the classroom and outside on the.
Again, it's like picking your brain here, because you're throwing loads of really good bits, and I love the passion that you speak with from like the kids' point of view. Now, obviously, you've got the Inter-Schools League being promoted, obviously said by the WDF and so on. You've got Dartboard Maths, which is incredible. You've got the PDC doing Dartboard Bullseye Maths. Is there a way that all of this can morph into one and work together? Because effectively, you've got the PDC doing a bit, you've got you in the middle in all camps, and you've got the WDF endorsing this as well. In an ideal, perfect world, in 5-6 years' time, can this all be one huge educational tool for kids?
Literally within the next 2 months, we'll know exactly where that is, because my request has been that. And I'm giving you probably exclusive right now, but I'm saying that the Dartboard Maths is the very fundamental starting point for any kid between the age of 4 to the age of 11 to learn Dartboard Maths.
Yeah.
And then move into the International Dart School League from the ages of, say, 9, 10, up and until 18. And when you stay in that space, you're then obviously eligible from the age of 16 to play in the PDC Development Tour, and as well as you can do the PDC Tour as well at that age. So I think that with where we are at right now, what we've designed is futuristic, but it's literally present right now. So I know that, with the conversations that we had with the PDC, the Bullseye Maths, Dartboard Maths, I've been involved with the Bullseye Maths. Rachel Riley tweeted out.
I saw you there doing it. So in my head, I'm like, there must be a pathway where this all can be one huge educational tool for the better of one, kid's education, and two, the sport.
100%. And I think that we now in that space now where the conversations are right, because it's not that they have to create a product. It's not that they have to create an interactive. It's not that they have to create the structure for the IDSL, for the International Dart School League. It's not that they have to create partnerships. All we just need to do is the focus is the player, the kid, the youth in the school. The mental arithmetic, that's going to be part of it. How do we gamify maths learning? That's going to be part of it. And how do we introduce the sport into the school in a safe way, but also in a way that it's not just a platform where we put a dartboard in a class, throw darts, here you go, this is that. No, there's actually a structured process where we go from garage to grandstand, where we have a professional pathway that can make sure that kids start at the age, like literally when you handpick, for example, top footballers from a young age. They go into academy from an early age, they do everything that they can, they become super great, most of them do, and then they end there.
100%.
Why can't we do the same for darts? If we start to teach you the things correctly, we'll have a better product. When I say product, I mean a player that comes out of all of this academy. And if you look at Luke Littler, everybody was saying, he started when he was 2, for example. Now, he's been playing from his 2, he's now 17. So he's got 15 years of playing the sport. most professionals play the sport for about 15, 20 years as well, and then at that level. So I'm not saying that he's played at that level, but he's had coaching or practice and all of these things for that years. If we do the exact same now, with an influence of the PDC, the World Dart Federation, dartboard maths, IDSL, everything else that we have in place, and we can unify it in a way, it's going to change the way in which the sport is seen within the next 2 to 3 years. And I think that globally, number one, the interest of the sport spikes. Number two is the quality of the player spikes. And then number three is the commercial value within the paradigms of business changes, because there's going to be more merchandise, more darts sold, more dartboards. It's just a domino effect, which is a fantastic positive influence. And the sport itself can remove the stigma and the stereotype of it's old men that play the sport with beer bellies and all of that. We can now go, it's a young, rejuvenated sport that's going to change not only the sporting career, but it might even change the career, because maths is the basis for most careers anyways. And you look at going to university, like we potentially have, there's a little thing that I'm going to do in the coming years with universities as well. And it's going to change the way, again, how kids see mental arithmetic. And then parents get involved and go, you have to play this sport because it gets you here, and this will get you a tuition or a scholarship and all of this into this university, into that. Once you create that platform, it then becomes similar to what the sports in the US is like, where parents are so motivated and so invested to get your kid to play at the highest level so that he can get the college that he deserves, potentially a potential contract, which then gets him millions and millions of dollars. If we have the same thing with the sport globally, I mean, who knows where the sport will go next?
If you could pull this off and be a major cog in this chain of putting all this together, would this be your greatest ever achievement? Forget playing-wise, if you could do this and make this work educationally around the world, would this be your greatest ever achievement?
150%. I think that it eclipses me being born, if you must call it that, you know? I feel as though, I mean, a player like me coming from Africa, having a passion for the sport, living a dream, and for many it was a pipeline dream, because you come from Africa, from Mitchell's Plain, and you're not really given a chance to succeed, whether in a sport like darts at all. And you go to the Q school, you play in the Worlds, you get all of this, and then a lot of professional years are only 2 years, and then you disappear, you never hear of the player again. Now that, I mean, with the experience, the expertise that I've gained, the profile that I've developed, it will eclipse, I think it's going to eclipse a lot of what has been achieved within the sport. And I don't take it as a personal thing. I just feel as though if you have one life to live, and I can have an imprint on that life that I've lived, and I've left my footprint, and people go, Devon was here, that for me is a massive tick box, and I think that my life is successful.
Dev, it's an absolute pleasure catching up with you and picking your brain and the passion that you speak with, mate. Thanks for your time on a weekend, because I know you've got to go and play as well, but mate, it's a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Phil. Always a pleasure, my man.